I'm actually really enjoying working on slugs and snails in horticulture, in viticulture, in pasture, because it's helping my understanding of these things. So there's some generalities that we'll introduce, but what we're trying to do is understand individual species ecology and life history so you can get your bait timing right. It is rocket science. It is complicated. I'm going to try and make it simple and relevant to you guys. So, who's got common brown garden snails? So the experts can't even get the name right on this. It used to be known as Helix aspersa. We think from the literature its optimum temperature is 5 to 21 degrees. So how's it surviving in this part of the world when it's 40 degrees during the day? Snails have an amazing ability to shut down their metabolism, or basically go into a form of hibernation called avestation, where they basically turn things off, and that's how they survive. So all snails survive in the adult stage. They don't survive as eggs, they survive as adults. They're long-lived, so they live up for 12 years. Now, if you're farming them for escargot, if you've got a French restaurant, you can get them breeding within 2 years, laying eggs. But the reality is it's 3 to 5 years before they get to sexual maturity. And they can produce a lot of eggs over their life stage. So the other thing is, who knows anything about snails? What's unique about snails? Exactly. They actually simply are hermaphrodites. They can be male and female at the same time. But we'll also discover they tend to be male first. So after it's been hot and dry over the summer, the first thing is they want to drink, then they want to root, then they actually start feeding, and then they lay their eggs basically when the conditions are right so the eggs will survive, which means it has to be moist. So when's the best time to put the bait out? Yeah, just after, once they're starting to feed. And we generally think that that's in the autumn time. So last year, of course, I'm going to run a trial up here, it'll be fantastic. Guess what happened last year? And it was hot, and it was dry. And guess what was the best control for snails? Exactly. So guess what? Michael's come up here this year, and it's like there's no snails around. It's a disaster. Or if you want to look at it at the other way, it's actually quite a good thing. The point is these things will delay their life cycle. And the species I've been working on, mainly for the grains industry, with grains industry funding, generally have a 1 to 2 year life cycle. But you can see these here are a completely different length. But they all have some basics, and that is once they hatch out from the egg stage, when it's moist, they have a period where they're the size of a pin. Guess what? Those guys where I'm from in Bairnsdale in the veggie fields, we've already got juveniles running around, and they laid their eggs 3 weeks ago. Now the literature suggests that these things breed over the winter up here. In the Pyrethrum in Tasmania, they breed all year round. Their limiting factor on their breeding is actually more to do with winter time. So their actual activity, again, is affected by temperature as well. Now, does it get below 5 degrees over winter up here? Yeah. And that's why there's a lot of almonds I saw on the way up too, because you've got a chill factor. So for me, putting bait out in winter time for these guys in this area, I would question that. Who puts bait out in winter time? And that's the thing we're trying to do, and what there's a lot of funding from GRDC and trying to understand is what are those triggers for the best feeding. And traditionally the rule of thumb has always been put it out in the autumn before they lay their eggs. We all know that message? Yeah. But I think each species has its own little tricks up its sleeve. This is fairly technical information, but the other thing is all these snails we get are exotic species. And there's an invasive exotic species that establishes in a new country, they usually have what we call some sort of genetic plasticity. So they're fairly adaptable. So this is some data I pinched off a paper from Chile. And you've got 3 populations under different temperature regimes because they're at different parts of the Andes Mountains. And guess what? Their optimum temperature in which they operate varies between those populations. So there is local adaptation. So I can tell you when the best time to bathe is for your peninsula, for a heap of work that's been done over there. Is it relevant to an inland climate here? No, they do different things. So that's why it's very important to understand the context in which you're applying your controls. So it's good looking at the internet and getting a basic idea, and it's good listening to me as the drip under pressure and the unknown quantity. I think that's an expert, isn't it? Yeah. But it's still got to work in your environment. So that's why I put this up. Quite different in optimum temperatures. And guess what? Nothing like the temperatures I put on that screen from European data on the previous one. So when is the best time to bait is my question at all times. When are they going to ingest a lethal dose?
When they start feeding.
Exactly. When do they start feeding? Because they weren't bloody feeding last year. The simple thing you can do is just chuck a bit of bait out and go and have a look the next morning on dewy mornings. Have you had any dewy mornings yet? No. Yeah. So maybe putting a little bit of bait out and just seeing if there's anything on it where you know you've got a bad patch of snails is something you might want to start doing. Of course, I'm the brilliant expert and I've gone over their peninsula and said to these grain farmers, let's put some bait out in January because it had 60 mil of rain and all the snails are running around. Didn't kill a cracker because we had a week of hot weather. What was Pete saying about his spraying his grasses when it was hot? It didn't freaking work. Well, guess what? It works the same with snails as well. But there are some other complications too. So the other important one in vineyards that I have done a bit of work on is the white Italian snail. And it feeds on the leaves and can defoliate, as you can see in that first picture I put up. Has anybody got these guys? Yeah. Quite a temperature range, 19 to 44 degrees. You can kill them when it gets to 55 degrees. That's why they move off your nice bare between rows and up into the vines. So while they'll move off weeds going off, you know what I mean by your crop going off, so the vines are going off now, they'll move back out of the vines as the vines go off. So they like to feed on fresh food. So they're moving in and out of the vines and onto the different vegetation, as well as the traditional thing that you'd be all aware of, they're moving up when it's hot so they don't dehydrate, and that's where they invest. What we're seeing with cameras is, if you get your sprinklers turned on, or some humid weather come through, and you get 90% humidity, they'll actually move around in January to rehydrate. But they're not actually feeding there. So just because the snails are active doesn't mean they're feeding. The other really annoying thing is the black line is the thing you want to follow. I collect snails, and so does GRDC, pays people to collect snails in different species. These are from a vineyard in South Australia. They get put on bait in the lab at 22 degrees, so that's an optimum feeding temperature, we think. And we see how many we kill. And we also make sure they're feeding by putting a placebo in there as well. And we try and pick adults. That sort of springtime, again, they got a bit hot and they were a bit dry then, but that March time, again this year not quite as good a results, and they seem to be a bit later. But we're getting a better kill in that January to April period. Now this is a coastal environment where it can be very moist in January. Great idea this year, got a good kill in January. Do you reckon I should chuck some bait out? How's the withholding period? Yeah, it's right, good. put it out 60 days before harvest. They had a week of hot weather. They got a very poor kill. So again, temperature is actually affecting their feeding, even though they're moving. But we want to continue these sorts of data sets, but for other species of snails, we're seeing the same sort of thing in the grains industry. Over winter time, we're getting a very poor kill. What's happening in winter time with the snails? So, back to Dave's little problem, and because I didn't have anything in the PowerPoint presentation on this species, but because Dave's been so good to host us, we'll pass these ones around. I think they're the citrus small ground snail. There's very little known about this, but there has been some work done in a thesis back in the early noughties. This species can live for at least 2 years. So that species there, the Italian snail, only lives for 2 years. So if it can't complete its life cycle in 1 year, it'll delay it, but by 2 years it's done its thing. Those little things there, we think they can probably last for 3 years. So that work suggested that they can actually survive without doing anything under very ordinary conditions for 10 months. They seem to have an optimum temperature again around that sort of 10 to 20 degree mark. So they read in the lab and they lay eggs after about 6 to 8 days at 16 degrees. They hatch out, and like all snails, they have this period of 3 to 4 weeks where they grow very slowly. And then very rapidly they increase their shell size and their weight when they're feeding madly. That's what we think is going on around here. And in the springtime is you've got juveniles in that sort of second growth phase where they're really trying to put on weight and get big. Because the bigger I am as a snail, the more eggs I can produce and the more likely they are to survive. So these things, they can grow, and in about 11 weeks they can get to sexual maturity. And that's when they will look at exchanging sperm. And those guys can also self-fertilise. There is a fitness cost to that, but they can mate with themselves, but they prefer to mate with other individuals because they're fitter, and they can produce about 1,000 eggs, but not over one breeding season. They can do it over 2 years, so they can breed for 2 years as adults. That's that species specifically. So then, that means if you go out, and the work was done in citrus orchards, I think I've used the term right, they actually found juveniles in the orchard all the time. Was that because they'd been laying eggs all the time? No, probably not. They looked at the reproductive gland. It's just some are slower growing than others. So again, you've got this population that's at multiple stages. So again, putting one bait out for that species, you're probably going to miss some of the population because it's going to be at the wrong stage because it's so long-lived. I think that might be part of the problem with your brown garden snails too, because they can live for up to 12 years, and you've always got a few small ones, and some of them that are not at that feeding stage, they're going to be harder to kill. And I don't understand this completely, but I think it's got something to do with their metabolism. When their metabolism slows down, and this is indirectly from cold temperature work, it requires more active to kill them. And because they've got to feed to actually ingest a lethal dose of active, you can see it gets very complicated very quickly. But again, those things, if they can live for 3 years and breeding for 2 years, one bait, one autumn, is not going to solve your problem. You've got to keep your foot on the pedal all the time. So like Peepney's ryegrass resistance and controlling ryegrass, you've got to use anything in the toolbox which helps you get on top of snails. Baits alone, I don't think will control your problem. And that's why you've got to look at other alternatives. So that was just explaining the generic life cycle, basically. But as again, this is designed for those pointed and round snails, and not the exceptions to the rule that you guys have got up here, and why it's such a good opportunity to talk to you guys. So they'll all be available. But that's basically summing up again just some data behind it. the reproductive gland and moisture. So they actually have to be moist before they start reproducing. The other thing is the old rule of thumb is, have you ever squeezed a snail? Who likes squeezing snails? Have you ever seen them in the summertime when they're pasty? A bit dehydrated? They won't take bait then. They've got to sort of be juicy and moist. But the important thing is relative humidity. They will move on 95%, but definitely 100% humidity. They move around. So they don't just sit up on your post all summer and do nothing. So they could be breeding, and your small citrus snails could be breeding over the summer. And that again is getting to optimum temperatures. There's a lot of noise around this data, but you know, mid-30s to that 10 degrees, they're fairly active. Trying to kill them though. Feeding on baits, relative humidity, once you get over that 30 degrees, suggesting that we're very unlikely to have them actually feed on the bait. So even though we've got moisture around, there seems to be an upper threshold where they'll stop feeding. So for you guys up here, baiting too early in March, I think is a risk. But usually that's the way harvest anyway, isn't it? So you're not going to think about baiting then anyway. But the other thing is you can see how the feeding activity increases as it gets warmer. So quite often we see these snails moving in the mornings once the sun comes up, not at night. So guess where I'm running I run most of my trials now in the lab at around about that sort of mid-20s. And again, you've got the other thing is when it's too cold, they've got to actually feed more, and they actually need more active to kill them. So it really is important getting your timing right. Who would think of putting bait out in springtime as a follow-up? Working well? Yep. Yeah. So is any of this bloody stupid, or is it making sense to you? Yeah. So then the other thing is if you're doing it on wet weather, you'd be using a product that works after rain. That would be right. Or you're using just the cheapest stuff you can buy. Yeah. So this comes back to these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 products here all contain the same active. I don't worry about whether it stays together or not. So your cheap product can have mould all over it and look like terrible, and it will still, yeah, but it still kills snails in the lab. So don't believe any of the marketing that I would tell you if I had a company's hat on. But what I do is I actually put it out in the rain, and then I put it in the lab, and then I compare it with stuff that hasn't been out in the rain, hence the dark bar compared to the hatched bar. And there's your cheap products, really struggling to kill anything. They're your better quality products, killing a few things, but because they're a small pellet, as soon as they get any rain on them, they're actually losing active out of them. And then you get some other products that are actually rain fast. And this is back to the organic guys using the Eradicate. Great product, any rain on it doesn't work. And that's something you've got to be conscious of if you're using Eradicate, is it's got to go on after the rain. It's the same with your cheap stuff. It's got to go on after the rain or after you irrigate while it's still moist. And as long as you're doing that, and you're putting plenty out, I'd still argue at certain times you've got to get the timing better with cheap product, because it's only got 1.5% metaldehyde. There is a higher chance of you delivering a sublethal dose. But if you get your timing spot on, yeah. So it depends on your attention to detail. So that's just again, so Manna and Slug from Adama are both no longer on the market. but I still think the Pest Master that you can get out of Griffith is one of the best cheap brand-based products. So that's straight out of the bag, 30% killed. I just don't think it's really good enough. I just don't think it's working that well. But again, last year these were on the bloody snails that even the best product I could only get 50% kill with. So the best result in these trials was 50 to 60%. So again, even I got the timing wrong. Has anybody heard of Medikill? Medikill? No. It's a 5% metallohide product that's got glue in it. All this shows is once it softens up, oh bugger, don't worry. Snails don't feed on hard pellets, they've got to soften up a bit. So you've got to have that dew about, it does inhibit feeding the hard pellets. So even the Pest Master works after it's had a bit of dew on it and softens up a bit.
So the thing up here, you put the pellets out and then irrigate it in the springtime.
Yeah.
You still irrigate every, well, in spring, depending on the dribbles of sprinklers, you know,
Yeah.
10 days ago.
And that's why, and I'll declare here, I do work for the company that sells Benerex. That's why in those situations I say that product will last 3 to 4 weeks. So you can put 2 irrigations on it and it will still kill. Won't be as good as fresh air, but I think it does keep killing. So we'll skip all this stuff because we've sort of skipped over a lot of that anyway. I think this is the best control for the insect dogs. So guinea fowl. Guinea fowl. Honestly, you've got to look at other alternatives. And because a lot of these are exotic snails and we haven't got a biological component in our blocks, and if you're trying to grow inter-row cover crops or mulching under vines or anything like that, you're putting a lot of pressure on a product that doesn't actually work that well. So GRDC is investing in importation of a fly that parasitises the conical snails, none of your round ones, but again there are other things afoot at looking at function in your vineyard. And so just again having a go at you guys is trying to avoid using insecticides and lots of paraquat and certain fungicides that affect your biological function in your vineyard is important for a lot of pest control. Snails probably not so much, but that's just my little bit at the end to make you think about it a bit more. It still comes back to applying your control at the right time and making sure that you deliver a lethal dose. I think are 2 key messages that I want to highlight from today.